Tim and Leanne, I hope that you enjoy many years of happiness together. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your glasses and join me in toasting the new Mr. and Mrs. McArdle, the bride and groom.
Bride and groom! Woo! Cheers, baby. Cheers. Where's your booze?
Over there. Now pass over to Graham.
Story continues.
Ladies and gentlemen, can people hear me at the back? Excellent. So we're all part of a bit of a social experiment now, where we discover whether a blind man can read a speech that he did not memorise off of an iPad in size 105 font, which is, now that I look at it, far more unwieldy than I'd anticipated. I'd like to start by saying, because I would like to solve the conundrum that is going to rattle around inside your heads if you haven't met me before or spoken with me at length before, so that you can focus fully on my speech. The person that you're thinking of is David Mitchell. The chubby man from Peep Show, that's who I sound like. So, with that put to bed, I'd like to start with some congratulations. I'd obviously like to start by congratulating the bride and groom on having found their partners that they're going to be with for the rest of their lives. But I'd also like to congratulate each and every one of you for having, by some miracle, made it here today, hamstrung as you were by Tim's absolutely absurd organisation. Because, as we all know, it is perfectly reasonable to get a save the date a month before the event with a request for an RSVP 1 week from the date it is received. When Tim asked me to be one of his best men, I was honoured. I mean, I was a little bit annoyed that I was sharing the limelight. I mean, who's this guy think he is? Tim's brother. But I can't say that I was enormously surprised. Basically because I spent the last decade of mine and Tim's friendship telling him that either he made me his best man when he got married, or I was going to stand up and make some choice words anyway. So, this is basically a speech secured at gunpoint that you're going to hear. Now, I know what tradition says about what a best man speech should contain, and judging by the content of the messages that I've been getting from you all this week on WhatsApp, with your anecdotes, your pictures, your general baying for blood, I can tell what you were all expecting as well. But I really hate to disappoint. Tim is one of the most wonderful and genuine human beings that I've ever had the privilege to meet in this world. And if I could ever be half the man that he was, I would be the second nicest person you have ever met. And so I don't want to spend my time on his special day finding ways, weak points in his armour, finding ways to undermine him. And so instead I really want to focus on the things that make Tim brilliant, the attributes, the virtues, call them what you will, that make Tim the man that he is. One of them is friendship. I had the pleasure, or the misfortune, however you would look at it, of being almost inseparable from Tim for about 9 or 10 years. We went through school together, we went through university together, we spent a bit of time in our professional careers living in the same house together. And really it wasn't until we were apart and we went to pursue our separate trajectories, if you like, that I realised how much my vision had impaired. Such was Tim's commitment to me as a friend that he papered over the cracks, the troubles that I would have encountered, and that I hadn't even noticed them. The other thing that really stands out to me with Tim is his steadfastness. Now, those of you who know me will know that I am quick to bad decision making. And Tim has stood by me in some situations where I wouldn't say that I was wrong necessarily, but it was certainly questionable whether I was right. And much to his own misfortune, a lot of the times, he's always stood by me. Tim, one of the other things that stands out to me is Tim's intuition, you know? The fact that when our headmaster at secondary school walked out behind that building and saw us all drinking peach schnapps and getting up to general skullduggery and shouted out at us, "Don't bother running, you've already been caught." Tim's intuition meant that he saw straight through that ruse and immediately ran off. I was the only man not to be caught. Because that is the depths of Tim's loyalty. Commitment is a big thing. After Leanne, there's only one thing that Tim is really committed to, and it's the party. Oh, how Tim loves the party. And that was never, ever better embodied than the time that we went to a drum and bass night at Leeds University Union, and the fire alarm went off, the lights went up, the music stopped, and we all turned around to see Tim with his eyes closed, still dancing. When we later questioned him on this, he said that he just thought the music had taken a bit of a left turn. Resolve. Oh, Tim's got bags of it. When he approached my house at university, he walked straight into a trap, rang the bell. Me, Keith, Dave and Charlie popped out of 4 separate windows of our tall townhouse and began firing machine gun BB guns at him. A mere mortal would have run. Not Tim. Tim forced his way through our front door, threw me down a flight of stairs, grappled with Dave, took his BB gun out of his hands and smashed it in half on the floor. Because that is a reasonable reaction to being hit with small plastic pellets. Loyalty. You can say what you like about Tim, but Tim will always stand by his friends. And in an incident that will go down in history, in my mind anyway, as Burger Face, when I was thrown to the floor by a cretin outside of a club outside of Leeds through no fault of my own, Tim thought I must act. And so picked up his burger from the takeaway van, ran across the road and threw it straight in his face. Confidence. Now, I don't know if this was the name of the game that we used to play at university, but to my mind it was a game that was called Escalado, which was effectively a plastic thing that shook back and forth while little plastic horses metaphorically raced with each other. Now, the way that we played this game was that you could bet on these horses, and depending on whether you won or lost, depended on whether you had to drink shots or whether you had to give them to other people. Now, despite what was happening and the fact that he was losing heavily, Tim's confidence meant that he knew just to keep doubling down, just to keep betting, all or nothing. Because when you then end up with 36 shots of vodka to drink, who do you have to blame but yourself? Perseverance. When your friends tell you you can't drink that, you maniac, drink it anyway. Adaptability. Once Tim had been put to bed, and instead of going back to my own house, I decided to sleep on his bedroom floor to make sure he was okay, because if you guys aren't quick on the maths, 36 shots of vodka is more than a bottle of vodka. I awoke to hear what sounded a bit like a rushing river. But Tim's adaptability meant, in fact, when he awoke to find himself in a room with no toilet, did that stop him? No. He built a toilet out of his bedroom wall and a pile of his own clothes. Boldness. When I said to Tim, "What are you doing?" his response, "What are you doing in the toilet?" Now, I hate to get stuck on a theme, but honesty is one of Tim's big traits. And when he was at my parents' house, I have never seen it, although forced by Leanne, in more full force than Leanne stood with Tim in front of my parents saying, "Tell them the truth." And Tim having to explain to them that due to his adaptability, as mentioned before, finding himself awaking in one of their rooms without toilets once again, he had to fashion one out of his own suitcase and clothes and their wardrobe. Integrity. When Leanne got up during this act and had a go at Tim, Tim, still half asleep, climbed back into bed. And when Leanne's protestations awoke him and she informed him of what she had done, he said, "How can I do it? You're the one stood over there near the pig." decisiveness. Now, one of the things you can say about Tim is that he sees the situation, he makes a decision fast. Is it the best decision all the time? Who knows? But he makes things happen. So when Tim was made redundant through no fault of his own when we were both living in Birmingham, he gave me a call to say, Graham, it made me redundant. And I said, Tim, I'm going to be home in an hour, mate. We'll talk about it then. Don't you worry about it. On arriving back at my house, the door burst wide open, and I would like to remind you, an hour ago, I had spoken to Tim on his way home. The door burst open, and Tim was there, dishevelled in his underpants, with half a bottle of whiskey in his hands, going, "They bloody fired me!" Unflappability. So, one of the big things about Tim is you can't shake him. If you throw something at him, he will always... he will always up the ante. As could be seen when I thought we would go a bit soft touch with him on his stag-do, and we tied a cuddly unicorn to him, saying he had to carry it around with him for the whole weekend. 2 pubs later, Tim had the unicorn stuffed down his trousers, with the head sticking out of his open flies, and I heard a waitress saying to another waitress, "Good grief, I think that man's just destroyed that young girl's childhood." And humour. And Tim, I will just put your mind at ease, this is my last attribute.
I thought you were just going to leave it blank.
No. Tim will stop at nothing to crack a smile. He always wants to entertain his friends. And for this one, I really need to paint a picture, because I don't think he was doing this one on purpose, but it's just indicative that anyway, he still made me smile. On a holiday to the south of France, I woke up in the evening. Now, I won't